My mind's singing me no, but my body is telling me yeah. 30 years, Robert, 30 years they're trying to kill me. He stepped into the system as a music legend, but now the question chasing him isn't about hit songs anymore. It's about whether he'll even make it to the end of his own sentence. I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive. But I'm alive. The courtroom already made its call years ago. But behind those federal prison walls, a whole different story is unfolding. And it sounds way more intense than any legal document. Kelly is a predator, and as a result of our prosecution, he'll serve a long jail sentence. It feels like something passed in hushed voices late at night, through locked doors with real fear behind it. People have no idea that there's two different men, that there's a person Robert, there's a persona R, Kelly. Robert Sylvester Kelly, once praised as R&B royalty, is now surrounded by claims that are way too serious to ignore. Kelly is a predator, and as a result of our prosecution, he'll serve a long jail sentence. His legal team isn't just talking appeals anymore. They're laying out a situation that sounds dangerous on another level. I'm a man. I make mistakes. The timeline starts with heavy sentences already locked in. 30 years in one case, 20 in another, but instead of things settling down, the tension keeps rising. Now, as attorneys are saying something even more alarming, that prison conditions aren't just rough. They could be life-threatening, and they're not holding back when they say it. These are people who seek to kill Mr. Kelly, rather than allow the corrupt criminal conduct. They claim there are people inside who would rather see him gone than watch him serve his time. That one statement shakes everything up because it flips the whole focus from guilt or innocence straight to survival. Now, it's not singing just about the past. It's about what's supposedly happening to him right now behind steel doors and tight security. Filed an emergency motion this afternoon claiming officials with the Bureau of Prisons are trying to have him killed. The Bureau of Prisons, the system meant to keep inmates safe, is now being questioned by his own defense team, and that's where things start getting messy. According to these urgent filings, it goes beyond normal prison issues. Kelly's lawyer named two people who claim they were solicited by the Board of Prisons to kill him. His lawyers say an inmate linked to a violent extremist group was allegedly offered something chilling, possible early release in exchange for carrying out harm. The name now caught in the middle of this chaos is an inmate said to be terminally ill, someone who, based on these claims, had nothing left to lose. That detail alone adds a whole new layer of tension, because it hints at a situation where desperation and control could collide in ways people don't even want to think about, whether any of this gets proven or not. The reaction has already been loud, with many shocked at the idea that something like this could even be possible inside a federal system. Then the story takes an even darker turn. Kelly's legal team says he was personally warned to stay away from the prison mess hall, with fears swirling around tampering, poison, and contamination. That's not a small concern. That's the kind of fear that gets into someone's head every single day, affecting even how they eat just to get by, whether it's seen as paranoia or a real threat. The result is the same. Trust starts to disappear even in the most basic parts of survival. And just when it seems like the pressure can't get any worse, his situation reportedly shifts into full isolation. He's placed in solitary confinement, said to be against his will, locked down for 23 hours a day. That level of isolation starts to mess with time itself, making days feel endless and heavy. They was describing Lucifer. I'm not Lucifer. I'm a man. I make mistakes. His lawyers describe conditions that sound overwhelming, darkness, insects, barely any stimulation, and constant psychological strain building up with every passing hour. Then comes another shocking moment that changes everything again. According to the filings, while in that isolation, he was given medication in a way his team calls excessive, not long after he collapses and has to be rushed out under emergency conditions. Medical reports later point to blood clots in his lungs, adding even more intensity to an already explosive situation. Serious, potentially life-threatening complications, and just when that should have pushed things toward proper care, what happens next only adds more controversy. Instead of stability, he's reportedly sent right back into confinement, this time under armed supervision. That image alone becomes a powerful piece of his defense story, raising even more questions about what's really going on behind those walls. collapse, hospital, then straight back to isolation. It starts to look like a pattern his attorneys say feels way too consistent to ignore. They frame it as something suspicious, almost like a cycle repeating itself. But the court doesn't immediately go along with that version of events. A judge reviews the emergency request and shuts it down, pointing to a lack of solid independent proof to back up the claims. What are the lies that you're hearing that disturb you most? Oh my God, all of them. That little girl's trapped in the basement. No outside investigator stepping in. No strong evidence that can outweigh the convictions already locked against him. From a legal standpoint, the system stands firm. But outside the courtroom, the reaction is intense because now there are two completely different narratives clashing head-on. One is built on official rulings, the other on claims of serious danger inside a federal facility. Right in the middle of it all is a man whose sentence is already set in stone. Yet a situation keeps being challenged through nonstop filings that refuse to fade out. I need somebody to help me not have a big heart. His legal team keeps pushing, even hinting at higher level intervention, throwing around the idea of a presidential pardon. Every move adds more pressure to a case already packed with tension, suspicion, and questions that still don't have clear answers. But underneath all of this noise, beyond the legal talk, the emergency filings, and the prison reports, there's a bigger timeline that can't be ignored. None of these claims came out of nowhere. They stack on top of years of fame, accusations, court battles, and convictions that shape the reality he's now living in. And once that history starts coming into focus, everything shifts all over again. Robert, 30 years they're trying to kill me. Now, it's not just about what's happening inside a prison cell. The bigger question becomes how he even got there in the first place. Why does every part of his past seem to connect directly to the chaos surrounding him now? When the prison claims fade into background, the story pulls you backward, and it doesn't feel smooth or clean at all. It feels more like something being reopened that was never fully dealt with. There's a difference between Kelly and Robert. Kelly is this fun, laughing, loving guy, but Robert is the devil. Robert Sylvester Kelly didn't just fade away quietly. He crashed under pressure that had been building for years and years, stacking up until it finally broke out in front of everyone. And what really stands out isn't just the convictions. It's how long the warnings, rumors, lawsuits, and quiet talk had been circulating before the system finally took serious action. He came up in tough conditions on the south side of Chicago, raised in an environment where survival came first, no questions asked. Music wasn't just a skill for him. It was a way out, a sense of identity, and a form of power all wrapped into one. By the time the industry caught on, he wasn't just performing. He was taking over the scene. 12 Play didn't just sell records, it changed the direction of R&B. I Believe I Can Fly didn't just climb charts. It became something people connected to everywhere. But while all that success was lighting up the spotlight, there were also stories building in the background that didn't match the image people were seeing on stage. And people have no idea that this man just beat me on the bus. Back in the 1990s, accusations started to surface quietly, almost like they were being passed around in private, with people hesitant to speak too loudly about what they were hearing. A marriage involving a teenage Aaliyah. Quiet legal talk about documents that were allegedly falsified and settlements that closed disputes without ever letting them fully play out in open court. None of these moments stood alone. Each one stacked on top of the next, slowly forming a pattern that would later be impossible for people to ignore. Then came the tapes, the investigations and courtroom battles that dragged on for years. One major case ended in acquittal, not because nothing was questioned, but because the burden of proof didn't fully stick under legal pressure. And just like that, the story didn't end. It just hit pause. The music kept going, the tours didn't stop, and the spotlight stayed on him. I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive. But I'm alive. The public moved forward. But silence in situations like this is never really empty. It just waits for the right moment. Then 2019 hit, like a shockwave nobody could dodge. A documentary dropped and brought multiple voices together, connecting stories that had been separate for years. Suddenly, account of control, isolation, and manipulation weren't scattered rumors anymore. They lined up into detailed narratives that were hard to ignore. The industry that once pushed him to the top started pulling back fast. RCA cut ties. Streaming platforms began adjusting playlists, and public opinion shifted in real time. It was like watching everything crack from the inside out, and what came next wasn't just reaction. It was serious legal movement. Federal prosecutors stepped in, not with just one claim, but with a wide-reaching case that painted a much bigger picture. RICO charges turned everything into something far beyond a single situation. Now it was about alleged systems, coordination, and patterns built over time, adding even more weight to a story that was already packed with tension and unanswered questions. Kelly has brought so much pain to so many people, and he should be ashamed of himself. The courtroom stopped focusing on single moments and started looking at the bigger structure of it all. How behavior was allegedly repeated, expanded, and kept going over time. It wasn't just about one situation anymore. It was about a pattern that prosecutors argued had been built piece by piece over the years. Witness after witness took the stand, each one adding something heavier to the picture. Some talked about being approached through concerts. Others described being cut off from the outside once they got close, and some explained control that didn't sound like normal relationships at all. It sounded more like being trapped without visible walls. Every testimony stacked more pressure onto the case, building a narrative that became harder to shake. And when the verdict finally dropped in 2021, it didn't come quietly at all. Guilty on major charges, racketeering, Mann Act violations, the legal system, finally catching up to years of accusations. Then in 2022, the sentence came down, 30 years in federal prison. That number didn't just feel like punishment, it felt permanent. But even that didn't close the chapter. Another trial in Chicago followed, bringing more convictions and another 20-year sentence. Even though much of it runs alongside the first, it still reinforced the same outcome in a major way. The legal system kept stacking consequences, making it clear the situation wasn't slowing down anytime soon. By the time appeals came into play, the tone had already changed completely. There was no shock left, no guessing, just a slow, steady grind of legal process. The defense pushed back, challenging laws, procedures, and how everything was interpreted. But the appellate courts kept backing the original decisions. Even the Supreme Court chose not to step in, and that silence hit hard. It signaled a kind of finality without needing to say a single word. And while those legal doors kept slamming shut one after another, something else was opening up fast on the outside. Financial fallout. Civil judgments climbed into the millions. Royalties started getting redirected, and assets were pulled straight into court control. Even money earned decades ago didn't stay untouched. It started flowing into restitution. The fame didn't disappear. It just got rerouted into legal responsibility in a very real way. At the same time, inside those prison walls, the narrative around danger didn't fade. It kept popping back up at random moments. Reports of solitary confinement, medical scares, and even contraband investigations started circulating. Each situation came out like a piece of a bigger puzzle, something people couldn't fully confirm, but also couldn't ignore. It kept the story alive in a way that felt unpredictable and intense. And that's where the pressure really sits right now. It's no longer about the conviction. That part is already locked in legally. The real tension comes from how the story keeps changing even after the judgment is set. His projected release date, December 2045, stands firm on paper, but everything around it feels unstable, constantly shifting with new claims, new filings, and ongoing talk of danger and mistreatment. I've been assassinated. I've been buried alive. But I'm alive. Now the story sits in a strange place, caught between what's already been decided and what keeps getting claimed. On paper, everything looks final. Sentences are set, appeals have been pushed back, and the system has made its stance clear. But outside of those rulings, the noise hasn't stopped. It's getting louder in different ways. New filings keep surfacing, each hinting at conditions, treatment, and risks that his legal team says shouldn't be ignored. Supporters question whether enough oversight exists inside facilities like this, while others point back to the convictions and argue the system has already done its job. That divide keeps growing, pulling public opinion in completely different directions. At the same time, every update, whether it's about health, confinement, or legal strategy, quickly spreads and adds another layer to the situation. It's no longer just a closed case sitting quietly in records. It feels active, constantly evolving, with new angles being introduced when things seem like singing and music. They might settle down, and that leaves everything hanging in an uneasy balance. A fixed sentence on one side, ongoing claims and questions on the other. What happens next doesn't just depend on the courts anymore. It depends on what can actually be proven, what gets challenged, and whether any of these latest allegations shift the story in a real, lasting way. What makes the situation even more intense is how it refuses to fade out of the spotlight. Most cases slow down after sentencing, but this one keeps finding new life through filing, reports, and constant public debate. Every update pulls the story right back into focus like it never really left. There's also a bigger conversation building around it about how high-profile inmates are treated once the headlines die down. Some people are raising questions about prison oversight, medical care, and safety, especially when serious claims get filed. Others push back hard, saying the justice system already reached its conclusion and that the focus shouldn't drift away from the convictions themselves. That split keeps the tension alive, and it's not going away anytime soon. At the center of it all is a timeline that still feels unfinished. Even with projected release date decades away, the situation doesn't feel locked or settled. Legal teams can still file motions, conditions can still be challenged, and unexpected developments can still shift the direction at any moment. So instead of closing, the story stays active, moving, changing, and pulling in attention from all sides. And with every new claim or response, it adds another layer to a case that already carries years of history, controversy, and questions that continue to echo far beyond the courtroom. A man who once stood under bright stadium lights is now defined by isolation reports, legal motions, and constant prison transfers. The contrast isn't small. It's sharp and impossible to ignore, splitting his past and present in a way that feels almost unreal. And even with everything stacked against him, this story doesn't feel like it's slowing down at all. It keeps moving, shifting, and pulling attention. Back in, the legal system is saying one thing, his defense is pushing another, and public opinion is split right down the middle. Somewhere between all of that, the reality inside federal custody stays locked on one thing: time, slow, steady, and completely unaffected by the noise surrounding it. Because no matter what happens next, whether these danger claims are proven or dismissed, whether appeals go anywhere or hit a wall, the clock doesn't react. It just keeps ticking, steady and unforgiving, while the story continues to unfold piece by piece. And that's where things stand right now, unfinished, unsettled, and still raising questions. If you've been following this case, drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates as the story keeps developing.